Hi everyone, it's Katie from Paradise Falls family. In this video we'll be taking you through another part of our trip to Florida in April 2023 and specifically our time on the Disney Wish. This was our third Disney cruise and our third Disney ship, and we absolutely loved exploring the Wish, which is truly a beautiful ship. There's so much to say we've split this vlog into two. In part 1 here we'll talk you through our time on board and what we did on our cruise. In part 2 coming next week, we'll talk you through some of the more practical bits, an overview of the ship and tips if you're taking a Disney cruise anytime soon. If we scoot over anything in this vlog, don't worry, we'll cover it off in part 2, so make sure to subscribe to catch that. At this present time, the Disney Wish only operates out of Port Canaveral in Florida and runs cruises to and from the Bahamas over 3 or 4 nights, with stops at Nassau and Disney's private island Castaway Cay. We booked on a 4-night cruise in April 2023 with our first day in Nassau, our second at Castaway Cay and our third was a day at sea. Our embarkation day began at Walt Disney World at the Beach Club Resort. We'd pre-booked transfers through Disney and were picked up around 9 AM, arriving at the port around 11 AM.
Bye. Sorry about the weather. It was nicer earlier. We are going to be leaving the bus and we're going to take you inside the terminal there. So make sure you have your passports and birth certificates.
Being one of the earliest to arrive, the queues were really short and we sailed through check-in. We had maybe 10 minutes in the terminal to take some photos and have a look around before they called our boarding group, and we were aboard by around midday. On a Disney ship, they greet each family aboard individually, which is a lovely way to start off your Disney cruise.
Sutton. And please welcome aboard the Sutton family.
Wow!
Welcome.
Thank you.
Please welcome aboard the Ferries family. Please welcome aboard the Deddy family.
Look up!
And now it is time to gather around. Here.
My friends, gather round. It is now time to welcome you to the Disney Wish. My name's Lady Lily, and I'm a fairy tale player and keeper of Once Upon a Time here in the beautiful Grand Hall. Now, you see that wishing star up there? It's powered by these wishing wands, so let's all hold them up together. You see, when all these hands and all these hearts come together to make the very first wish, that's when the enchantment really begins. So, on the count of 3, let's wish for enchantment and for adventure. Let's all say together, wishes do come true. 1, 2, 3, wishes do come true. Well, let's go look at that. It's working like a charm. Or perhaps like a wish. You know, like a Disney wish. And it looks like a joy by Princess Rapunzel and Flynn Rider and Captain Minnie! Oh my goodness! Well, the princess had to send you on your way, but please come back and play for this grand tour enchantment every day. Thank you.
On the Wish, you're welcomed directly into the Grand Hall on Deck 3. This area on any Disney ship is the central hub and a beautiful area with something always going on. The Wish is slightly different in that it has a full stage as well, and when we boarded there was a short welcome ceremony featuring Minnie Mouse, the fairy godmother, Rapunzel and Flynn Rider. All of the kids are also given wishing wands too, which ours absolutely loved. And with that, you're free to explore the ship until your stateroom is available. We started with a short trip up to Deck 4 to guest services to book onto the Royal Gathering or Princess Meet and Greet, and we were able to book on for the morning of our day at sea, which fit in with our plans perfectly. We also bumped into Minnie Mouse with no queues at all, which was a lovely little treat and another perk of being aboard early. With the admin sorted, we headed up to Marceline Market to grab some lunch before it got too busy. Marceline Market is basically the main quick service restaurant on the ship, other than the few counters on the pool deck. It's buffet style, and for those of you familiar with any other Disney ship, it's the equivalent of cabanas. There's loads of seating, but it does get really busy. Fortunately today we were there early and got a lovely table right by the window so we could enjoy the view with our lunch. With lunch sorted, we headed on up to deck 11, which is the main pool deck. It was around 1:45, meaning we still had a bit of time yet before our stateroom was available and before the mandatory muster drill. The deck was still relatively quiet, so we got some seats, changed and spent around half an hour cooling off in the pool. We were planning on riding the Aqua Mouse, which is their signature water coaster, but we found it had a lot of technical problems and it went down quite a lot on this trip, and while we were queuing it went down again, so we had to leave it for another time. By now our stateroom was ready, so we headed to explore our room on deck 7. We'd booked a veranda room for 4, which was lovely and has a split bathroom, meaning that the shower and the toilet are in separate rooms, which was really handy with there being 4 of us. The room then had a double bed along with bunk beds for the kids, which are pulled down by your room attendant and then put back every day. We also made sure to book an adjoining room with my sister and niece, which was really handy. We took the opportunity to settle into our room, unpack, put our magnets and fish extender on the door and get changed before heading to the mandatory muster drill for 3:55 PM in the Worlds of Marvel restaurant for us. I've explained the fish extender process in a separate short, which you can find on our YouTube short playlist, but basically it's a gift exchange arrangement that we love taking part in on each cruise that we do. I'll go into more detail on what this is and how it works in part 2 of this vlog. With the muster drill done, it was time for the sail away party back on deck 11, along with the all-important cocktail of the day. The sail away parties are a brilliant little celebratory show and party on the top decks, just as you leave port. It's always a really exciting moment and a great way to start the cruise properly. It's also the first time you'll hear that famous Disney cruise horn on your sailing.
So, get up in your seats, shake to the beat, and get ready to shake your fancy feet with your new Disney Cruise Line family. And now to get this party popping, go wild and crazy for the one, the only, Zach!
Hello, Disney Wish! I've got a question for you all. Are you all ready for vacation? Now that was good, but it's time to see how loud you can really be, so even Captain Minnie can hear you. I said, are you ready for vacation? Well, it's time to get this party started, so let's welcome the cruise staff team up on the stage, and let's do a bit of a chat slide. Everyone, let's face the screen.
And this time, we're gonna get...
Clap your hands.
So let's sound the ship's horn. Minnie, would you please do us the honor?
Oh, I'd love to. Will you all help me count down?
Shall we? Happy to.
Yeah, that was fun. Here we go. From 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
dinner, we'd reserved a spot on the first dine-in sit-in at 5:45 p.m, and our first night was in Arundel, the Frozen-themed restaurant. With a bit of time to spare, by chance we wandered past the Hyperspace Lounge, so we poked our heads in for a quick look. Strangely enough, there were plenty of empty tables, so we took the opportunity to grab a quick drink, having heard how busy this bar gets later on in the cruise. The theming in here was amazing, making you feel like you're on board a spaceship, and the kids absolutely loved it here. We enjoyed a couple of Cloud City cocktails, which were like ice cream floats, and they were delicious, and then we headed off to find Arundel. We were seated on table 708, which unfortunately was pretty near the back of the room. This meant we were quite far from the central stage and a bit disconnected from the show which runs between courses, which features Elsa, Anna, Kristoff, Olaf and Wandering Orkan, who was the star of the show for us. Despite this, we still had a lovely evening, enjoying the amazing food and service as usual. On Disney ships, your servers stay with you every evening, meaning they get to know you and you them, which is another lovely aspect to the cruises. Our servers Elaine and Jury were superb and made our cruise extra special, playing with the kids, doing magic tricks and telling us all jokes every evening. With the dinner shows, it's worth noting that you don't actually get to meet the characters properly. They do whiz between the tables, but it's not long enough really for pictures or conversations. Our kids were a little disappointed with this, so it's a good idea to prepare them in advance. After dinner, we had about an hour before the evening show started at 8:30. We headed back to the room for a quick rest and to grab some anti-seasickness tablets. Unfortunately, the weather during our cruise was pretty bad, particularly on this first evening, with waves of up to 17 feet. We were told this sort of weather is very rare, and everyone was staggering around looking a bit ill, including us. We tried not to let it ruin the evening and headed out for the show, Disney Sees the Adventure. We got seats for this show fairly easily, arriving about 15 minutes before showtime, having stopped to say hi to Donald and Goofy. The show has a very loose plot and is essentially a collection of Disney songs performed by the characters themselves, which we all really enjoyed. A quick tip here, we'd bought a popcorn bucket at Disney World, which we kept and brought with us on the ship. You can then get fill-ups at Preludes outside of the theatre for just $1.77, so we topped up before each show. After a busy but incredibly fun day, we headed back to our room for some rest. Our cabin host had already made up the room for us, with the kids' beds all ready, and we always came back to a chocolate and a different towel animal each day, which we all loved. It just made coming back to your room after a busy day a really lovely end to each day. The next morning we docked at Nassau with the ashore time of 8:30. We headed to Marceline Market for breakfast at around 9 a.m, but found it to be crammed full with no tables at all. We decided to leave breakfast until a little later and head up to the Hero Zone on Deck 12 to run the Incredicourse before it got too busy. This is one of the new activities specific to the Wish, and it was only running for 3 hours that morning and then another hour or so in the afternoon. We were there about 10 minutes after it opened and there was already a pretty big queue, but we decided to wait it out. Top tip, bring some socks, as I hadn't and wasn't allowed to take part. Greg and the kids loved it though. It was a little short given the long wait, and maybe we've been spoilt with some of the Ninja Warrior courses back home. You can wait and run it as many times as you want, but they weren't up for standing in the big queue again, so they just had one go round each. With that ticked off, it was back for another go at getting some breakfast. The market was still full, and unfortunately that was the only place to get food on the ship at that time of day. So we each got a plate full of food and headed out to the pool deck to have breakfast, rather than sitting and eating in the market. It wasn't ideal, but we made it work. Ready for the day, we headed ashore at around 11 a.m. I'll talk through our time in Nassau separately in another vlog, but the weather wasn't great, so we were back on board at around 1:30, just in time for lunch. We were able to get a seat in Marceline Market a bit easier this time and had some time to sit and dry off and refuel. We dried off in the room a little and then the kids were desperate to try the kids club. This is called the Oceaneers Club for their age and it's absolutely amazing. It has an extra entrance via a slide from deck 3 which the kids enjoyed every time they got checked into the club. While they were having fun, we caught the end of the DVC members event in the Lunar Lounge, enjoying a few free drinks and getting to meet Captain Mickey. We also picked up our free daily DVC gift which you can get from the DVC booth on deck 4. Over the course of our cruise, we picked up some DVC magnets, pop sockets, lip balms, backpacks and lanyards, so it's worth stopping by if you're a DVC member. After around an hour, we picked the kids up and spent some time dropping off their fish extender gifts that they wanted to give out. This is a great way to get your bearings on the ship as you go from deck to deck, dropping off different gifts to different people. After all that walking, we enjoyed relaxing on our veranda as the ship departed, sailing past Paradise Island before getting dressed for the evening. The weather was still pretty poor and the waves were still rough, around 15 feet apparently. However, we were starting to get our sea legs now and didn't feel nearly as bad compared to the previous evening. Tonight we were eating at 1923, which is themed after old Hollywood and legendary Disney animation. There are 2 dining rooms, one for Roy Disney and one for Walt Disney, and we were seated in the Roy dining room. We really enjoyed our meals here, finding it a little bit more relaxing than the other restaurants as it doesn't have a show, so it provides a really good counterbalance. The restaurant is just off the Grand Hall, so afterwards we jumped in the queue to meet Chip and Dale before heading to the theatre for the evening's show. Tonight it was The Little Mermaid. While the show was good, it's basically a standard retelling of the classic story, so didn't offer anything particularly new and was probably our least favourite of the 3 shows that we saw on board. After another fun-packed day, the kids were more than ready for bed. With them all tucked in, we opened up the adjoining door as my sister had kindly offered to babysit for the evening. Greg and I headed out to the Bayou Lounge on deck 3 as it was somewhere we'd walked past and really wanted to try. We spent a lovely hour or so enjoying hurricane cocktails, beignets and listening to live Disney tunes played on the keyboard. It was one of our highlights of the cruise and it took us back to our trip to New Orleans pre-kids. Next up was the Oogie Boogie Bash back in the Hero Zone on deck 12.
What have we here? Got my invitation, have you? I have to say, I didn't expect to see so many of you. I didn't realize there were so many like me. I'm inspired. Oh, but where's my head? I'm vexed. Chaser of dreams and nightmares. I listen for the whispers and the shouts in the hopes of one day finding him, the boogeyman himself. Oogie Boogie. Do you know him?
We didn't know what to expect with this as it was brand new at the time, and I have to say we probably think it needs a bit more work. We were greeted in a small sidebar and enjoyed the welcome show which set the story. We were then all led into the main hall where the dance party was. This is where we found it a little bit awkward, as although the small first room was packed full, this main room was now maybe less than a quarter full, and the music was all dance versions of Descendants songs which didn't really seem to get many people going.
Uh-oh, I may have overdone it a bit. Now what to do with all of you? After all, weren't you in on the plan to summon me? Oh, I know. Let's roll the dice to choose your fate. Snake eyes. Much better. Looks like I've won, but you caught me in a good mood. I just love the fears and frights of all those villains you showed me. So, tonight, we're going to have a villainous nightmare bash. Now.
The host did her best and Oogie Boogie made an appearance on the balcony, but it just didn't seem to really work. I think the kids would have probably loved this event though, if it was earlier in the evening, but this one was an adults only event. Or alternatively, it may have been better in a smaller venue, playing a wider range of music rather than just Descendants songs, which might have got people dancing a little bit more. We left after about 20 minutes and the room had mostly emptied by this time. All in all, it's a good idea, but probably needs some work to make it work properly. I think this is probably a soft launch before they do this properly on the Halloween on High Seas sailings later in the year. The next morning we docked at Castaway Cay, Disney's private island in the Bahamas. The ashore time the next morning was 8:30 AM, so it was an early start. The weather still wasn't great though, and they had trouble docking, so that time was pushed back about 15 minutes, which gave us a bit longer to get ready. Given the trouble we'd had getting seated the previous day, we pre-booked a room service breakfast for 7 AM, which we enjoyed in bed while we woke up and got ready. We were ashore just after 9 AM once the rush had cleared a little, and again, I'll talk more about our time on Castaway Cay in a separate vlog. Unfortunately, the weather was still rubbish, so we were back on board by 2 PM. We never seemed to have any luck on Castaway Cay, as our previous trip also had weather the same as this. After drying off in the room a little and opening some more fish extender gifts, the kids were pestering for Kids Club again, so we let them go and play for about an hour while we enjoyed the Making of the Wish documentary in the cinema. There are 2 cinemas on board running free films throughout the day, with lovely Peter Pan and Alice in Wonderland theming, so they're definitely worth checking out if you have the time. We then took in some karaoke in the Lunar Lounge, watching, not participating, before picking up the kids.
Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, for lovers, dreamers, and me.
Again, we enjoyed hanging out in the Grand Hall, joining the queue to meet Captain Hook and Smee. It was pirate night on board, so we donned our bandanas and medallions and headed for dinner in 1923 again. On Pirate Night, there's a special themed menu. I think it's fair to say that this isn't our favourite menu, and it seemed to be exactly the same as on our first cruise back in 2019, so perhaps is in need of a bit of an update. The kids wanted one last play in the kids club, so we let them pop in while we did a bit of shopping. Then we all took in the pirate themed show at around 8:30 together. This is usually shown on deck 11, but due to weather was moved inside to the Grand Hall. This is just a short 15-minute show featuring Mickey and the gang. Then there's a later show and fireworks on deck 11 at around 10 PM, but these were in doubt because of the weather, and we were all exhausted, so we decided just to call it a day and get some rest rather than forcing ourselves to stay up. They did actually manage to go ahead with the fireworks though, so those who waited were rewarded with the famous Disney Cruise Fireworks at Sea. Our final day on board was spent at sea, Unfortunately, the captain had found some calmer waters and better weather. Greg was up early as usual, so headed off to explore the ship while we slept. The ship was lovely and peaceful early in the morning, and he was able to wander the decks with hardly anyone around, exploring some of the adult-only areas and taking in the sea views in the sun. Marceline Market was also relatively quiet, so he took the opportunity to have breakfast in peace, enjoying Mickey waffles looking out to sea and even spotting a shark down in the water below. Before heading back to the room, Greg swung by the kids club. They regularly have open house sessions where adults can come and take a look around. We hadn't seen in so far, so he took the chance to try out the slide for himself and have an explore. The area is simply amazing, and we can see why the kids kept wanting to come back. There's a brilliant Star Wars themed room, a Beauty and the Beast storytime area, a Rapunzel themed art area, as well as a place where you can design and ride your own roller coasters, just to name a few of the things to do. Later on, Finley also showed us around the Marvel room at another open house, which was his favourite room by far, and it has regular meet and greets with your favourite Avengers. Back in the room, we were all up and ready, having had a quick room service breakfast in the room, and so we all headed out together to the Grand Hall for our Royal Gathering reservation. The Royal Gathering is a pre-bookable event where you can meet 4 princesses in a row. In our case, Moana, Cinderella, Rapunzel and Belle, with a relatively short queue. You aren't given along with the princesses though, and I whizzed through a little bit, but the kids loved meeting their favourite princesses. There was just enough time for a quick look around the Marvel room in the kids club and to meet Ant-Man before it was time for our next reservation. This time at the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique. This is on deck 5 just off the Grand Hall, and the kids were booked in at 9:45 and 10 AM with our niece at 10:30. We'd booked Finley the Captain Mickey package, which included an outfit and a bit more of a boy's makeover with hair gel etc. This package cost around $150. Eva had the cheapest package, known as the Deluxe Carriage package, as she'd brought one of her own dresses from home. This package included the usual makeover, plus a cute backpack, t-shirt and makeup to take home, and came to around $100. With it being our niece's first time here, she had the full package including a princess dress, and this came to $200. All 3 kids had a wonderful time, although a point to note is that with it being later in the cruise, they were a little short on sizes for the outfits. This was a bit disappointing given the cost, and we had to make do a little bit, so our tip would be to book this earlier in the cruise to try and give yourself a little bit more choice. With their new looks, the kids were of course desperate to spend some time in the kids club and show them off, so we said a quick hello to Pluto, who was meeting in the Grand Hall, and then we dropped them off. We spent this time meeting up with some friends on board, shopping and relaxing in the adults area. We did want to try Nightingale's, which we'd heard is a great little bar, but it was closed for some of the drink tasting sessions, so unfortunately we had to miss this. We got a little bit of admin done, picking up our DVC freebies and registering for our placeholder on the app for a discount off a future cruise booking. By around 12:30 we decided to prize the kids away from Kids Club and get some lunch at Marceline Market. It was surprisingly quiet and we were able to have a nice relaxed lunch enjoying the buffet. For dessert we popped into Joyful Sweets just next door, which is an inside-out themed sweet shop and bakery that the kids had been eyeing up ever since we boarded. We were able to get a treat each for around $20, so not too bad at all. As it was a day at sea, there was a bonus matinee performance of the evening show Aladdin taking place at 2 PM. One of the main things we wanted to do was get in some pool time and try out the Aquamouse, but the pool deck was just so busy, so we switched up our plans and did the show at 2, and instead we spent the evening in the pool when it was so much quieter. We've done this before on a previous cruise and have some lovely memories of playing in the pool together at night, watching films on Funnel Vision and enjoying the slide with no queues. So we headed off to watch Aladdin, topped up our popcorn bucket again and found it to be fairly quiet, with most people choosing to take in the show later that evening. The kids were desperate to get near the front because in the other shows they'd let off confetti at the end, so try and get in the first half a dozen rows if you want this too. The show itself was really good, completely made by the genie who was hilarious and in our opinion was much better than the Little Mermaid show earlier in the cruise. Afterwards, the kids really wanted to go into the Oceaneers Club again, so we let them go in for another hour or so one last time while we repacked our cases in our stateroom. With everything sorted, we picked them up around 5 PM and spent an hour exploring the ship a little more. We enjoyed a game of shuffleboard on Deck 4, one of our cruise traditions, then made our way up to the steps at the very front of the ship to enjoy the views and take some pictures. It was time for dinner at 5:45 and it was the evening we'd most been looking forward to, the World of Marvel restaurant. We're all big Marvel fans, so we're really excited for this one, and we weren't disappointed. In our opinion, this was the best of the three in the dining rotation on the Wish. Of course, the food was fantastic, as it is in each of the restaurants, but we felt the entertainment here was on another level, with brilliant specially filmed scenes to watch between courses and an appearance from Spider-Man himself. Like the Arendelle restaurant, he whizzed through though, so you don't get a chance to meet him properly, but the kids were still so excited to see him.
Hi, I'm Scott Lang, but you might know me as Ant-Man.
And I am Hope Van Dyne, the Wasp.
Look, before we start, let me address the elephant in the room. I've heard a lot of chatter out there asking why I didn't shrink down, go in, and kill Thanos in a really creative way. First of all, gross. Secondly, it's much more complicated than that. Allow me to explain.
If only we had the time.
So after all that excitement, next up was our late night swim. We quickly changed in our room and then had a good hour in the pool until it closed at 9 PM. We almost had the pool to ourselves and the Aquamouse was a walk-on and we had a lovely chilled time together. It was great to finally try out the Aquamouse, but for us it doesn't compare to the Aqueduct on the Disney Fantasy. It felt like maybe a third of this ride was open and incline, and the actual ride was relatively short and not quite as thrilling as we were expecting, or as we remember the Aqueduct being. Having said that, it was still loads of fun, and we'd definitely ride it again, although perhaps not with the massive queues that we'd seen during the day. We were literally the last ones out of the pool at 9, but our night wasn't quite over yet. On the last night of every cruise there's a farewell show in the Grand Hall, which is a lovely little send-off to round out the cruise. We had just enough time to get showered before the show at 10:15. This is a really short little show where a load of Disney characters are introduced to the crowd, including Mickey and the gang and some of the princesses. Immediately afterwards they spread out around the hall and across the decks for meet and greets. It's a bit manic, but it's all really great fun, running from one character to another to get one last picture with as many as you can. Back at the room, we left our luggage outside of our rooms, tagged and ready to go overnight, and I'll talk more about the debarkation process in part 2. The next morning it was an early start for breakfast in our assigned dining room, for us the Worlds of Marvel, at 6:55 AM. There was a reduced menu which wasn't great for those with allergies, but we were able to get something before walking straight off the ship to get our luggage. This was our third Disney cruise on our third ship, and it's safe to say we're 100% Disney Cruise Line converts. We had an amazing time on this cruise and can't wait for our next Disney cruise from New York in October this year. Part 2 of this vlog is coming next week, so make sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss this. In the meantime, if you've got any questions or any other tips, then please let me know in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching.